Hello, I'm Cathy Ford, the Virtual Writer in Residence for the Scottish Book Trust. Welcome to my second podcast on creative writing. Today I'm going to talk about what for me is the beating heart of any story, and that is character. Can you imagine Harry Potter without Harry or Ron or Hagrid? Can you imagine Little Women without Jo or Beth or Amy or Laurie? These characters are what actually make the story what it is. Whenever I write, what I really want to do is write characters who are as realistic as possible. And that means they're not going to be perfect. It means they're going to have flaws because nobody's perfect. And it means that they're going to have lots and lots of aspects that are utterly believable. And today, I hope in this podcast, we're going to talk about ways in which you can begin to develop characters in your own writing that are realistic and believable and that will work well in your story. Whenever I read a book, it's the characters that I take away with me when the book's finished, and some of them actually haunt me. Some characters terrify me. For example, Bill Sikes in Oliver Twist, who's surely one of the most evil creations in fiction. He's believable though. Some characters make me feel sorry for them, and they also make me laugh. For example, Joey Pigsa in all Jack Gantis's books, which are so funny, and yet there's this very fragile, vulnerable little boy at the centre of them, and you believe in him, you feel as if you know him. There are even some characters that I must confess I've fallen in love with a bit. For example, Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, and I don't know why I love him, because he's not exactly the nicest guy you could meet. He's grumpy and he's bad-tempered and he's violent. And the weirdest thing of all is that he was created in the mind of a Victorian spinster. And this, one of the kind of great dark brooding heroes of fiction. How do you do that? How do you create somebody who's so realistic? When it comes to creating characters in the books that I write, I have a bit of a confession to make. I don't always make characters up completely out of my head. A lot of the time I borrow or steal from real life. I use elements of people that I've met, sometimes people that I know very well, and I'm going to actually explain this a bit more in the task that we'll be doing shortly. But I'll give you an example first of one character who is almost about 60 or 70% based on somebody I know. In my book Fat Boy Swim, the main character Jimmy has an Aunt Paul, and she's based on my younger sister. As I was kind of planning the book, I knew that Jimmy was going to have somebody that was almost like a mentor to him, somebody that supported him, who was good fun, who was very different from his mum. And my sister's personality just seemed to fit this character, and her appearance as well seemed to belong to the story too. I wanted somebody who was extrovert, somebody who wore very bright red lipstick, somebody who wafted perfume after them when they passed you. And if I shut my eyes, I just saw my sister in my imagination, and she is the kind of almost the bones of Aunt Paul in Fat Boy Swim. So now I'm going to set you task 2. I want you to think of somebody you know really well. Your mum, your dad, one of your brothers or sisters, your granddad, maybe your best friend. Picture them. Now I want you to imagine them when they're happy. How do they behave? Does your mum go about singing? Does your dad dance and speak in a funny voice? Do they laugh a lot? Do they smile a lot? Bet you can see them in your imagination. What do they do when they're angry? That same character. Do they shout? Or maybe do they not shout and they go very, very quiet? Does something happen to that person's face? Does their colour change? Do their eyes stick out? Are you frightened of them? What does that same character do when he or she is worried? Maybe they chew their lip, or they pull their hair, or they bite their nails. If it's somebody you know well, you'll be able to tell exactly as soon as they maybe walk into your house how they're feeling. And this is you observing character all the time. You can do it. You can analyse somebody, you know how they tick. And you want to try and transfer these emotions to any character that you develop and make your character behave like a normal human being does in different situations. If you go to the Scottish Book Trust website, you can read about the Scottish Book Trust team's favourite characters. My favourite character is from a book called the Regeneration Trilogy. I'm actually cheating a bit because it's 3 books put together, and my favourite character is a soldier called Prior, and the reason I pick him as my favourite character is because he's flawed, he's not perfect, but because I was with him for 3 books, I felt by the end of the story that I actually knew him, and when I finished the book, I walked about for 2 days grief-stricken because the book was finished and I felt I'd left part of my life behind. And to me, that's what a good character in a book should be. Somebody that gets inside your heart, I suppose, and who you can't forget. Something else you could do, which might be quite interesting, is for you to describe what you think your favourite character looks like if he or she hasn't been described in a book. I think the best stories are the ones where you don't actually get any information about what the character physically looks like, their hair colour, their eye colour, their size, unless it's really, really important, because that means every single person gets a chance to imagine that person in their head. Also, some of you might like to draw some of your favourite characters, and it would be quite interesting to see if the pictures you come up with are different. Here's a slightly more challenging task. What I want you to do now is I want you to create a character. Now, first of all, you're going to have to decide whether it's a male or a female, what age they are. You're going to have to actually think of somebody that you would like to spend some time with in a story. So don't think of somebody that you're not going to be interested in, because you'll just get fed up after a while when you're writing about them. I want you to think of that character and then do what we did in the first task. Try and imagine how that character behaves when he or she is happy, sad, worried, stressed. And you'll find on the Scottish Book Trust website there's a sheet that you can actually print off, and it's almost like a table of aspects of the personality of your character, and you'll see that it's set out asking you how your character behaves when they are feeling a certain way. So we have happy, sad, stressed, worried. Then it gets slightly more complex. How does your character behave when he or she is embarrassed? Perhaps they blush a lot, or perhaps they speak too fast, or perhaps they say things they shouldn't. And again, the behaviour of your character might actually lead to the story itself and lead you to think about a story that could be based around their behaviour. If you ask yourself these questions about a character, these are the kind of things that can lead into the bigger story, the bigger picture, and before you know it, you can actually have something that you really want to continue writing with. The task gets a bit more complicated then, and I want you to think about your character in slightly more abstract situations. So, what is your character's secret ambition? This could be the story itself. What's your character's biggest problem in life? Most books actually have a problem, or most stories actually have a problem at the heart of them. If you ask yourself that question about this character you're beginning to create, again, you might be inspired to take the story further. In what circumstances would your character lie? Lying is going to bring you into conflict with other people. It's going to involve maybe secrecy, covering up, upsetting people. Again, there's a story behind that. Now, you could ask questions about your character all day. You could, everybody in a class, for example, could think up another question to ask about this character that you've created. And by the end of whatever session you have on this, you should have this picture of somebody in your head that you feel you know, and it would be fantastic if you could put this person that you've created into a story. And as I said already, one of the questions that you've asked of your character might actually be the story itself. Maybe you'd like to send your drawings, your character descriptions, your lists of characteristics to teen@scottishbooktrust.com, and we'd love to have a look at them. So that's all for task 2. There's quite a lot in that task, but I hope you managed to come up with an interesting character, and in the next podcast we're going to be looking at dialogue.